And we will walk in his paths, for out of Zion shall go forth the law, and they shall beat their swords into plowshares, and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war any more. Religion is a social and cultural organization, a set of beliefs and perspectives. Religion is the key driver for law, culture, and moral. It might be the core of humanity. Regardless of religious affinity or intensity, having a system based on moral benefits all. Religion is influencing the way humans perceive reality more than any other factor in history. All names for God separate people from the divine reality, said Meister Eckhart. The impact religion has over peace or war is existential, and it depends on the extent to which groups stretch their similarities or differences. As the world's economy, culture, politics, and society is getting more and more connected in the modern world, politics are complex, and it seems modern conflicts are not diminishing, but through them all, one can still see a world approaching wondrous dimensions. This project is checking the possibility of attaching the religious connections as well. World religions express similar worldviews and moral codes. All of them express a difference that exists to a certain extent, and today is seen very clearly. The points of difference enable the casting of national and political context into religions, that makes it difficult to find common denominators for cooperation. If we return to the basis of faith, we will identify similarities that can increase that possibility. We can use the same similarities and attribute the power of each group to a common one. The interreligious approach, which has already begun, promotes the planning and constructions of multi-communal temples in several religious centers of the world, such as Rome, Istanbul, Mecca, Moscow, etc. In the city of Delhi, at the end of the 20th century, the Lotus Temple was built, a temple that refers to no less than 9 religions and is aimed at all human beings. The image of such a temple, in a city laden with the many spiritual meanings of Jerusalem, can create an inspirational prototype for of such new temples. With such new attempts, Israel can better become a center of pilgrimage, while Jerusalem can realize its potential as a world spiritual capital. The heart of this planning is to change these sensitive areas to a world center of pilgrimage for believers of all faiths and species. In order to meet this goal, it is necessary to build an appropriate overall infrastructure. This will be a source of income for the residents of the region. The third temple, according to the Jewish tradition, is the temple to be built in Jerusalem. It is based on an ideal description of the book of Ezekiel, at place of the destroyed first temple. The building of the third temple is mentioned in the last chapter of the book of Ezekiel, and later in the Mishnah, Talmud, Midrash, and halachic, Kabbalistic, and Hasidistic books. The role of religious structure today is changing, from the religion icon that is tested to ambiguous spaces that can reflect religion's ideas alongside the spiritual and the civil. Although we think of minarets for Islam and Gothic cathedrals for Catholicism, there is no fundamental or essential form for worship spaces in most major religions. The third temple as well, although described in detail, leaves an opening for modern architectural planning according to the universal values that are appropriate today. But are spiritual or multi-faith spaces even relevant at a time when secularism is growing? In fact, they are more relevant than ever. Our contemporary civilization has exacerbated the sense of existential emptiness and meaninglessness, and the need for spiritual or transcendental space has never been so relevant. The temple, in essence, can meet these needs by adapting them to the 21st century. The temple can be interpreted from Ezekiel's vision as a collection of religious and civil ceremonies. The same functions are relevant to a large population as such, and today, more than ever. These ceremonies should be deployed as an additional layer on the backs of the existing old city. The temple should not be viewed as a term for plateau, but rather as an one layer of the many existing ones of the old city. As Herzl described it in his book Altneuland, the symbols of the different religions of different peoples and generations were still rising, but there was something new, strong, and joyful about them: life. The old city between the walls had been little changed. They saw the house of the Christian Holy Sepulchre, the house of the worshipper of Omar, and many more. But different wonderful things have been added. Here is the magnificent building of splendor. It is the Hall of Peace. The peace of silence was in the old city. The whole is already present in the city and cannot be outdone. On its basis, the temple's system should be assembled as constituting the whole. The city, in its holiness, will have the vision to absorb thousands of pilgrims, and for that purpose a camp should be set up next to Damascus Gate to absorb additional quantities of tourists as needed. A main public transport station will be added to the existing light rail station, and traffic will be directed around the area to allow direct access to the old city. The square that will be created will reflect the existing trade while adding another layer to the sunken part. The whole old city, like the Ezra, surrounded by walls. Outside it sits the Sabil, a basin, the structure of purification to separate between the sacred and profane. More in the square is the altar. An altar is any structure upon which offerings are made. Adjusted to the 21st century, the building will suggest a variety of up-to-date offerings and will function as a recruitment and placement center for volunteering and donation possibilities. In its drawback from the original altar architecture, the building revolves around fire, which its lights illuminate the actions outward. When you enter the old city, wandering through the existing alleys that meets to the junction between the four quarters, the same point of intersections is amplified by a defined transmission on a two-way axis. The staircase will lead the pedestrian to the rooftop layer of the city, opening a new perspective towards the dual sacred and the other directions visitors. The bima, from which the sermon is delivered, is situated at the public square of Moristan. The square constitutes in it various religious buildings, on which on top of them can simultaneously project several stages. The third temple has no need to symbolize, but to look at the existing as such. In contrast to familiar symbols, it will offer a blank, from which one can look at the existing texture. The action will perpetuate the distance, which always exists, from the whole.